My son sent a text message in our family group chat. It said, "We think it's best if Mom takes a step back for now." My daughter-in-law responded with a bright green thumbs up emoji. I replied, "Understood. I will respect that, and I will be stepping back from paying the house mortgage and from the $5,000 monthly transfers." That night my phone blew up with desperate calls. But let me tell you how I got here. How I, a 72-year-old woman who had given everything, ended up being exiled from her own family with 16 words and an emoji. And how that same woman finally decided that enough was enough. It all started 15 years ago. My oldest son, Edward Vance, came home with Brenda on his arm, his eyes sparkling. "Mom, she's the one," he told me. And I believed him. I welcomed them with open arms. I cooked a special dinner and brought out my best crystal. Brenda smiled and called me Mama Lydia. From day one. She gave me a big hug. She said she'd never met anyone as warm and welcoming as me. And I, like a fool, just melted. I thought I had gained a daughter. I didn't realize I had signed a lifetime contract as the family ATM. 6 months later they got married. The wedding was beautiful. I paid for Brenda's dress, an ivory lace gown that cost $3,000. I also covered the flowers, the venue, and half of the catering. "Brenda's folks can't contribute much, Mom," Edward explained. "You understand, right? You always understand." And yes, I always understood. I always said yes. I always opened my wallet because that's what mothers do, right? Sacrifice, give, support even if no one is supporting you. A year later, the topic of the house came up. "Mom, we found the perfect house," Edward told me over the phone. His voice sounded excited, almost childlike. "But we need help with the down payment. The banks want 20% and we just can't come up with it." I had just sold the condo my husband and I bought when we were young. The money was tucked away. It was my security, my cushion for old age, but Edward was my son and Brenda was pregnant. They were going to have a baby, my first grandchild. How could I say no? I gave them $40,000 for the down payment, my entire reserve, everything I had saved over 30 years of marriage. "We're going to pay you back, Mom," Edward promised, "as soon as we get settled." Brenda hugged me, tears streaming down her face. "You're an angel, Mama Lydia. I don't know what we'd do without you." I felt good, useful, and needed. Little did I know I had just bought my own ticket to heartache. It didn't end there, though. 2 months later, Edward came back. "Mom, the mortgage is higher than we thought. And with the baby coming and all the expenses, we're stretched really thin. Could you help us out for the first few months? Just until Brenda is back at work after the delivery." I worked as a freelance tax preparer. I made decent money, but I wasn't rich by any means. Still, they were my children, my blood, my future. I agreed to pay $1,200 toward the mortgage each month. "Just the first few months," I repeated. Edward nodded. "Just the first few months, Mom." Those first few months turned into years. 5 years of paying the mortgage on a house where I didn't even live, where I was barely invited, where there was always some excuse for my visit to be put off to another day. "The baby's sick," or "we have plans," or "Brenda needs to rest." But when they needed money, there I was, always available, always ready, always the savior. And then there was Paula, my younger daughter, who was married to Rodney Baker. They needed help too. "The kitchen is ancient," she said. $3,000 to remodel it. Rodney wanted to take an online coding course, $500. The kids needed tutoring, $400 a month. "Mom, you can afford it," Paula would say. "We'll pay you back when things get better." Things never got better, though. The requests never ended. And I never said no. Until one day, I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 72-year-old woman, tired, with wrinkles I didn't have 5 years ago, with a body that ached from working so hard to support other people's lives. I asked myself, when was the last time someone asked me how I was doing? When was the last time I got a hug that wasn't followed by a request? When did I stop being Lydia and become just Mom, the ATM? I decided it was time to speak up. It was February, unseasonably warm for that time of year. We were at my house, Edward, Brenda, Paula, Rodney, and the grandkids. A family dinner. I had cooked everything as always. pasta, salad, dessert. I even served the wine. I waited for the right moment. Kids, I said, my voice soft. I need to talk to you about something important. I think it's time for you to start becoming more financially independent. They all looked at me. Edward raised an eyebrow. Brenda's fork froze halfway to her mouth. You both have good jobs, I continued. You've been stable for years. Maybe it's time for me to step back a little. The silence that followed was brutal, as if I had confessed to some terrible crime. Edward slammed his wine glass onto the table. What does that even mean, Mom? His tone was cold, almost accusatory. It means I need to think about my own future too, I replied. I'm 72. I won't be working forever, and you're not children anymore. You can handle this on your own. Brenda let out a short, bitter laugh. So, now you're tired of helping us after everything we've done for you? I froze. Everything they had done for me. When? Where? Paula intervened. Mom, you can't just cut us off all at once. We have expenses, obligations. We're counting on you. Counting on me. The way she said that phrase as if I were a utility, an app, a renewable resource. I didn't say I was going to cut you off all at once, I explained. I'm just saying we need to make a plan for you to become self-sufficient. Rodney shook his head. This is very selfish of you, Lydia. Selfish. The word landed like a stone in my gut. 15 years of giving everything, sacrificing everything, and now I was selfish for wanting to breathe. Edward stood up from the table. I think you're changing, Mom. You're not the same. Brenda nodded in agreement. It's true. You're becoming bitter, negative. It's not healthy. The dinner ended in tension. They left early without even helping to clean up, without a proper goodbye. I stayed alone, surrounded by dirty dishes and a silence that hurt more than any scream. I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, wondering if I had done wrong, if I really was becoming selfish, if it was my duty to keep giving until I was completely empty. The following days were strange. Edward wouldn't answer my calls. Paula responded with short, cold texts. Busy, Mom. Talk later. As if I were a nuisance. As if asking for a little consideration had somehow turned me into the enemy. I tried to explain myself. I sent long texts. I called. I insisted. But nothing worked. The ice between us grew colder every day. And I began to feel something I had never felt with my children before, fear. Fear of losing them. Fear of being left completely alone. Fear that my honesty had broken something irreparable. A week later, I got a call from Brenda. Mama Lydia, we need to talk. Her voice was serious, very formal, like she was in a business meeting. Sure, what is it? I replied, my heart racing. Maybe they had reflected on things. Maybe they understood my point. Edward and I have been talking. We think you've been very negative lately. Your comments about money made us feel bad. As if everything you've done for us was a burden. I gripped the phone tightly. Brenda, I never said that. I just asked that we start thinking about the future. She sighed. That condescending sigh people use when they believe they are absolutely right. The problem is your energy, Mama Lydia. The kids feel it. We feel it. We don't want that negativity around our family. And with that, she hung up. My hands were shaking. Negativity, toxic energy. Those modern buzzwords people use to label anyone who is inconvenient for them. Me who had given 15 years of my life. Me who had sacrificed my savings, my dreams, my peace of mind. Now I was the toxic one, the negative one, the one who didn't belong. 2 days later, things got even worse. Paula invited me for coffee. I thought it was a sign of peace. I arrived at the cafe with a glimmer of hope. She was already sitting there, glued to her phone. She didn't even look up when I sat down. Hi, honey, I said, but she just nodded. Mom, this has to be quick. I have a meeting. We ordered coffee. She kept texting, completely ignoring me. Paula, is everything okay? She finally looked up at me. Mom, Edward told me what you said, and honestly, it's unbelievable after everything we've done for you. There was that phrase again. What have you done for me? I asked. I really needed to know. I needed to understand what part of this whole equation I was missing. Paula frowned. Mom, we give you company. We visit you. We include you in our lives. Isn't that enough? Company, visits, inclusion. As if they were favors. As if allowing me into their lives was a gift I should be eternally grateful for. Honey, I didn't ask to be a burden, I said. I just asked for a little more independence from your side. She shook her head. This isn't about independence, Mom. It's about you changing. You're becoming difficult, selfish, and frankly, I don't know if we want that version of you in our lives. I got up from the table. I didn't even touch my coffee. I didn't say another word. I walked out of that place with the last shred of my dignity. I walked to my car, sat down, closed the door, and there all alone I cried harder than I had cried since my husband died. I cried for the lost years, for the money that would never be returned, for the love I gave so freely that was now being collected as a debt. I cried because I finally understood something. To them I was never just Mom. I was a resource, a solution, a bank account with feelings. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, thinking, calculating, remembering every transfer, every sacrifice, every single time I said yes, when I desperately wanted to say no. And something inside me hardened like cooling metal, like drying cement. I no longer felt sadness. I felt clarity. A cold, perfect clarity that showed me the unfiltered truth. They had used me for 15 years. And now that I dared to set a boundary, I became the problem. I opened my laptop and logged into my online bank account. I looked at the automatic transfers. $1,200 a month to Edward's account for the mortgage, $3,800 a month split between both children for emergencies, course payments, utilities, and extras. Everything was there, everything perfectly documented, everything perfectly traceable. I took out a notebook and started adding things up. The numbers grew and grew. In 15 years I had transferred over $200,000. $200,000 of my hard work, my effort, my future. I leaned back in my chair, took a deep breath and made a decision. If they wanted space, they were going to get it. But the space would be real, complete, without my money, without my help, without my ever-present ATM services. They would have all the space in the world and I would finally have my life back. The next day I called the bank. Good morning. I need to cancel some automatic transfers. The operator was kind and efficient. In 10 minutes, all the transfers were stopped. Then I called the bank that held Edward's mortgage. I was a cosigner, a guarantor. My name was on those papers. I want to remove myself as the guarantor on this loan. They explained the process to me. It wasn't immediate, but it was definitely possible. I started the paperwork, signed the documents, and sent the emails. Next, I reviewed the credit cards. Years ago, I had given Edward and Paula supplementary cards on my account for emergencies, so they wouldn't have to go without anything. I had turned a blind eye to those cards being used practically every month at restaurants, for clothes, for gas, things that were definitely not emergencies. I called the bank again. I want to cancel the supplementary cards on my account. The operator typed. Both of them. Yes, both of them, I confirmed. Click. Click. Cancelled. Finally, the joint account. I had a joint savings account with Edward that we opened when he bought the house. Just in case you ever need quick access to funds, Mom, he had said. But the reality was that he always had access to my money without even asking permission. I closed that account and transferred everything to a new one, solely in my name, solely under my control. I did all of this in silence, without notifying anyone, without any drama, with the same coldness they had used to shut me out. If they wanted to treat me like a service, I would teach them that services can be canceled. And that day, I canceled my subscription to being taken advantage of. 3 days passed, quiet and still. I felt strange, lighter, as if I had taken off a heavy coat that I had worn for so long that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to walk without it. I drank my coffee slowly in the mornings. I read a book that had been sitting on my shelf for 2 years. I walked in the park alone, at peace, without expecting any desperate calls, without being on alert for the next invented emergency. And then the text message arrived, the text that changed everything. Edward had created a new family group chat, but I wasn't in it. I knew because Paula accidentally forwarded me a screenshot. The message read, "We think it's best if Mom takes a step back for now. We need space as a family to heal." And underneath, Brenda's bright green thumbs up emoji was approving my expulsion, celebrating my absence. I stared at that screenshot for minutes that felt like hours. The letters didn't change. The thumb was still there, green, approving, celebrating, as if my exclusion were some sort of family achievement, as if getting rid of me was a cause for celebration. I read the message over and over, looking for something, a doubt, a crack, a sign that someone had said no, that someone had defended me. But there was nothing, only complicit silence, only that green thumb shining in my face like a final insult. Paula had sent me the screenshot by mistake. That was clear from the text that arrived 30 seconds later. "Mom, sorry, that wasn't for you. Please forget it." Forget it. As if it were that simple. As if I could just erase the image of my own children casting me out of their lives. My fingers flew over the keyboard. I didn't think, I just wrote. "Understood. I will respect that. And I will be stepping back from paying the house mortgage and from the $5,000 monthly transfers." Enter. Sent to the original group chat, the one where I was still included. The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. I could just picture them. Edward staring at his phone, his eyes wide with shock. Brenda holding her breath. Paula rereading the message, trying to understand if it was really happening. Rodney asking what was going on. All of them in total shock because none of them ever thought that I would have the nerve to actually do it. None of them believed that sweet Mama Lydia could bite back. But I had just done it and the bite was deep. I turned off my phone, placing it face down on the table. I didn't want to see the responses. Not yet anyway. I needed this moment, this silence, this calm before the storm that I knew was coming. I poured myself a glass of wine, something I rarely ever did. I sat in the armchair by the window, the same one where my husband used to sit and read the paper every Sunday. And for the first time in 15 years, I felt something like real freedom, heavy, painful but real. The glass trembled in my hand, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. It was power. It was the sensation of having recovered something I thought was lost forever. My own voice. For so many years I had spoken in whispers, always apologizing for existing, for needing things, for wanting something for myself. And now I had screamed in silence with just 19 words that were worth more than $200,000. I had screamed, "I matter too. I exist too. And my existence is not reduced to what I can give." I looked at the dark, silent phone. I knew what was coming. I knew the calls, the texts, the pleas. The accusations would start any minute. But for now, in this perfect instant, there was only silence, and that silence was all mine. I finished the wine slowly, savoring every sip, savoring every single second of this new version of myself that I was just getting to know. 2 hours later, I turned on my phone, and it was like opening a floodgate. 23 missed calls, 42 new messages, voice notes, long texts, desperate emojis. All from Edward, Brenda, Paula, and Rodney. Even one from Jenna, Brenda's sister, who had never even messaged me before. All of them wanted to explain. All of them wanted to fix things. All of them were panicking because the money spigot had been abruptly turned off. I started reading with Edward's messages first. "Mom, we need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Please call me." Then Brenda's. "Mama Lydia, you can't do this. We have obligations. You can't just leave us high and dry." Paula's. "Mom, please understand that message was a mistake. It wasn't for you to see it that way." And Rodney's. "Lydia, this is very impulsive. You need to think about this better." Every single message was a stab. Every word only confirmed what I already knew. They weren't worried about me. They were only worried about their precious cash flow. Not one of them said, "I'm sorry." Not one of them asked how I was feeling. Not one of them even acknowledged the pain they had caused me. Just panic. Just fear. Just the raw desperation of people who are watching their comfortable lifestyle start to crumble. And something inside me, something that still held a tiny glimmer of hope, finally went out for good. Like a candle burning all the way down. Like a light that flickers and then dies completely. There was absolutely no turning back now. I replied with a single message to the original family group chat. It is not impulsive. It is a thoughtful decision. You asked for space. I am giving it to you. But real space includes financial independence. I wish you all the best. Period. No emojis, no exclamation points, no drama. Just the cold, hard facts, clear and non-negotiable. The phone immediately started ringing. Edward was calling, so I declined the call. It rang again. Brenda was calling, so I declined again. Paula, I declined. Rodney, I declined. Every rejected call was an act of self-love. Every silence that I chose was a scream of dignity. I wasn't going to give explanations. I wasn't going to justify myself. I certainly wasn't going to beg for a place in their lives. If they wanted me out, I would be out, but it would be on my own terms. That night I went to bed early. I expected not to be able to sleep. I expected to feel guilt, remorse, but none of that came. Only a deep, bone-weary exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that comes after carrying something incredibly heavy for far too long and finally letting it go. I slept soundly, without needing any pills, without even turning over in bed. For the first time in years, I slept in complete peace. I woke up with the sun streaming through the window. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I had slept for 10 hours straight, something I hadn't done since before Edward was even born. I stretched in bed and my body actually ached less. My mind was clear and bright. I picked up my phone. 57 new messages, 13 more calls, even a 20-minute voice note from Edward. I didn't open anything. I just went to the kitchen, made myself some coffee and buttered toast, sat by the window and ate breakfast all alone, calm and complete. The phone kept ringing all day long. But I had discovered something absolutely marvelous. The mute button. Every time it vibrated, I just continued on with my life. I watered the plants. I cleaned the house. I organized my closet. I even found clothes that I hadn't worn in years because I was always too tired, too worried, or too busy solving other people's endless crises. I tried on a coral dress that I had bought 3 years ago and never even wore. It fit me perfectly. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in a very long time, I actually liked what I saw. By the third day, the phone stopped ringing quite so much. The messages were more spaced out, but their tone had definitely changed. It was no longer panic. Now it was full-blown manipulation. Edward texted, "Mom, the kids are asking for you. They're saying Grandma doesn't love them anymore." Paula sent, "I can't believe you're doing this to us right now, especially when Rodney is going through such a rough time at work." Brenda even sent a photo of my grandchildren with a caption, "They don't understand why their grandmother abandoned them." Every single message was a calculated hook. Every single word was carefully designed to make me feel incredibly guilty, to make me come crawling back, to make me open my wallet again. But something had profoundly changed within me. I could now clearly see all the strings, all those invisible threads that they had always used to move me around like a puppet. And now that I could finally see them, they simply didn't work anymore. I read each message with a strange sense of detachment, with a coldness, as if they were addressed to some other person because in a way they really were. Those messages were desperately searching for the old Lydia. The one who always gave in, the one who constantly blamed herself, the one who inevitably always came running back. But that Lydia had died. And in her place, someone completely new had been born. Someone so much stronger. Someone who had finally learned that real love is never, ever measured in dollars transferred. On the 4th day, the call I knew was coming finally arrived. It wasn't from Edward or Paula. It was from Antoinette, my older sister. The only family I had left from my generation. I answered because things had always been different with her. "Lydia, what in the world is going on?" she asked, her voice soft, non-judgmental, just filled with genuine curiosity. So I told her everything from the very beginning. Every transfer, every sacrifice, every humiliation, the group text message, the green thumb emoji, my own reply, and finally my big decision. She listened in complete silence. When I finished, there was a very long pause. "You know what I think," she finally said. "I think it took you 15 years too long to finally do the right thing." Her words hit me with such unexpected force, because I knew that she was absolutely right. 15 years of being nothing more than an emotional ATM. 15 long years of believing that giving until I was completely empty was somehow love. 15 years of confusing constant sacrifice with having real worth. Lydia, listen to me, Antoinette continued. What you did was not cruelty. It was pure justice. And if they can't see that, it's only because they never really saw you. They only ever saw what you could give to them. We hung up about half an hour later. I was crying, but this time it wasn't from sadness. It was from pure relief. It was from much-needed validation. It was the confirmation that I wasn't actually crazy, that I wasn't the horrible monster that they were trying so hard to paint me as. That night, I sat down with all the bank statements from the past 15 years. I had kept every single one of them, every transfer, every payment, every receipt. I printed them all out and organized them by year, by child, and by purpose. When I was finally finished, I had a stack of papers about 8 inches high, 8 inches of solid evidence of my sacrifices and my incredibly misplaced love. I looked at them, and I felt something incredibly strange. It wasn't pride. It wasn't shame. It was clarity. The pure and simple clarity of seeing your life boil down to just numbers, of fully grasping exactly how much you were worth to other people in cold hard cash. I grabbed a fresh, gray folder, tucked all the documents inside, and meticulously organized them with labeled tabs. Edward, Paula, shared expenses, extras. Everything was perfectly documented. Almost as if I was prepping a case for court. And in a way I guess I was, though not for a judge. It was for myself to have solid, tangible proof that I wasn't blowing things out of proportion, that it wasn't all in my head, that I really had given everything I had, and they really had taken it all without a second thought. On the 5th day, Edward just showed up at my door, completely out of the blue. He rang the doorbell not just once or twice but 3, 4, 5 times, really laying on it. I peeked out the window. He was all by himself, no Brenda, no kids, just him. His hands were shoved deep into his pockets, and he had that look on his face that I knew so well. The one he wore as a little kid when he'd broken something and was trying to fix it before I found out. I opened the door. We just stood there, looking at each other. The silence hanging between us was heavy, like a ton of bricks. Mom, we need to talk, he finally said. His voice sounded worn out, like he'd been defeated. Come on in, I answered. I didn't hug him. I didn't offer him any coffee. I just stepped aside and let him pass. We sat down in the living room. He took the armchair, and I sat on the chair facing him like 2 total strangers hashing something out, like 2 people who used to mean the world to each other and now barely recognized each other. Mom, things have gotten way out of hand, he started. We didn't mean to hurt you. That text was a mistake. Brenda was just upset. I was frustrated, but it wasn't anything serious. I looked him straight in the eye. Those eyes that were the first things I ever saw when he was born, that used to look at me with so much love when he was a little boy, that stopped seeing me somewhere along the line, and I still can't put my finger on when. It wasn't serious, I repeated, my voice flat. Edward, I was kicked out of a family group chat. I was told to take a step back, and your wife celebrated it with an emoji. What part of that wasn't serious? He shifted around uncomfortably. Well, you started all this with that whole thing about not helping us out anymore. You made us feel like we were a burden to you. And there it was, the perfect role reversal. The one who was hurt was now being painted as the one doing the hurting. Edward, I said with a calmness I didn't even know I had in me. In 15 years I have given you over $200,000. I paid your mortgage for 5 years. I transferred $5,000 a month. I covered emergencies that weren't really emergencies. And the second I asked for a little bit of independence on your part, I suddenly became the bad guy. Don't you see anything wrong with that? He just shook his head. It's not just about the money, Mom. It's that you've changed. You've become different, colder, more distant. I actually laughed. A short, bitter laugh that just escaped without me even trying. I've become different because I'm exhausted, son. I'm exhausted from giving and giving and giving without even getting a sincere thank you in return. I'm exhausted from being seen as a solution instead of a person. I'm exhausted from only existing to serve you all. Edward leaned forward, his hands clasped together. Mom, I get that you're upset, but you can't just cut us off like this. We have obligations. The mortgage, the kids' expenses. Things just don't work without your help. And there it was, the plain, unvarnished truth. Brutal and honest. He wasn't there because he missed me. He wasn't there because he cared about my feelings. He was there because his whole financial world was about to come crashing down. Because without me, the bills just wouldn't get paid. Because he needed me, but not as a mother, as a personal ATM. Edward, I said, standing up. You're adults with jobs, with incomes. If you can't afford your mortgage without me, then you bought a house that was too expensive for you. And that's not my problem. That's yours. He stood up too, his face turning red. Are you really going to do this? Are you going to abandon us like this? Your own kids, your grandkids? I walked toward the door, opening it wide. I'm not abandoning you, Edward. I'm setting you free, and I'm setting myself free too. You're going to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, and I'm going to learn to live without carrying the weight of other people's worlds on my back. He looked at me in utter disbelief, like he just couldn't process that his mother, his sweet, always submissive mother, was actually saying no to him. This isn't over, he said as he walked out. Brenda is furious. Paula is too. We're going to have a family meeting about this. I closed the door behind him. I leaned back against the wood, my legs shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. But I had done it. I had said no to my son. And I had survived. The ceiling hadn't caved in. The world hadn't ended. It had just changed. And that change, as terrifying as it was, felt right. It felt like finally taking a breath after being underwater for way too long. That night, Paula came by too, showing up around 9 p.m. She knocked softly, almost timidly. I had been hoping for something different, hoping that maybe she, my younger daughter, would actually understand where I was coming from. But her first words made it pretty clear that wasn't going to happen. Mom, she said, Edward told me what happened. This is crazy. You can't do this to us. I let her in. We sat down in the kitchen. I made some tea, but she didn't even touch it. She just fidgeted with the mug, turning it around and around in her hands. Mom, I know you're upset, but think about the kids. Think about what this means for them. The kids. It always came back to the kids. The perfect shield, the card that never failed to get played. Paula, I said, I love my grandchildren, but you're their parents. It's your responsibility to provide for them, not mine. I raised my kids. I did my part and I did it well. Now it's your turn. She looked at me with glassy eyes. And what about us? Don't we matter? 15 years of this relationship means nothing? I leaned across the table. Paula, tell me something. When was the last time you called me just to ask how I was doing? Not to ask for money, not to ask me to watch the kids, just to talk? The silence was her answer. She lowered her gaze and swallowed hard. Mom, it's not fair. You know we're busy, that life is complicated. I stood up. Exactly, honey. Life is complicated for everyone, even for me. But no one ever asked if I was busy, if I was tired, if I also needed help. They just assumed Mom would always be there with her wallet open, with her arms open no matter what. Paula stood up too. This is cruel, Mom. Truly cruel. I looked at my daughter, my baby, the one who used to hug me every night before bed. The one who called me her hero and who was now calling me cruel for refusing to be used anymore. You know what's cruel, Paula? I said, my voice trembling. Cruel is realizing that your children only look for you when they need something. Cruel is seeing a thumbs up emoji celebrating your exclusion. Cruel is working until you're 72 to support lives that aren't yours while your own life is just slipping away. That is cruel. She grabbed her purse. I'm not going to stand here and listen to this anymore. When you calm down, we'll talk. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and I just stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by a silence that no longer scared me. The next few days were a strange mix of peace and storm. Peace because I had finally set some boundaries. Storm because the consequences were coming in waves. Brenda sent me a long text message full of accusations. She said I was destroying their family, that the children were crying for me, that Edward couldn't sleep, worrying about how they were going to pay the bills, that all of this was my fault for being selfish in my old age. I read every word without even getting upset. It was like reading the script of a play I had already seen a million times. The same old manipulations, the same attempts to make me feel guilty, but they just didn't work anymore. Rodney also texted, his message more direct than the others. Lydia wrote, "This is a mistake. Families always support each other. I don't understand how you can just turn your back on your children like this. My mother would never do this to us." His mother, the one who never helped them with anything, the one who lived her life without taking on the responsibilities of her adult children. I actually replied for the first time in days. "Rodney, your mother is right. Adult children should stand on their own 2 feet. Maybe it's time for you and Paula to learn that." He didn't respond, but he blocked me. And honestly, it was a relief. A week later, I got a completely unexpected phone call. It was from Arthur Sterling, my neighbor of 20 years, a widower like me, always kind, always respectful. "Lydia," he said, "forgive me for getting involved where I don't belong, but I've noticed you've been alone lately. Is everything okay?" His call really surprised me. For years, we had only ever exchanged quick hellos from across the street. "It's a long story, Arthur," I replied. "I have time," he said, and something in his voice made me trust him. I didn't tell him every single detail, but I told him enough. He listened without interrupting once. When I finished, he just sighed. "Lydia, you did the right thing. And I'm telling you this because I made the opposite mistake. I let my son drain me until there was nothing left. He passed away 3 years ago and left me with nothing but debts and regrets. Don't make the same mistake I did." His words really stuck with me. Debts and regrets, the 2 things I was desperately trying to avoid. Arthur invited me out for coffee. I accepted. We met at a little cafe near the park. We talked for 2 hours about life, about children, about how love can sometimes blind us until it's too late. He told me about how he had also given everything, how he had also been used, how he had also learned way too late that giving without limits isn't love, it's self-destruction. "And you don't regret it?" I asked. "Regret setting limits?" "No," he replied. "I only regret not setting them sooner." I left that cafe feeling a little less alone, a little less crazy, a little less like a monster, because Arthur had seen me not as an ATM, not as a resource, but as a person who had made a difficult but necessary decision. We walked back to my house together. He said goodbye with a hug, the first genuine hug I had received in months. A hug that wasn't asking for anything, that was just giving. And I realized something. I had been so busy giving that I had completely forgotten what it felt like to receive. 2 weeks after I made my decision, the family meeting finally arrived. Edward organized it. He sent me a formal message, almost like a legal summons. "Mom, we all need to talk together. Saturday at 4 p.m. at your house. It's important." I didn't ask any questions. I just replied, "Okay." I spent the days leading up to it preparing, but not emotionally. That was already settled. I prepared with evidence. I took out the gray folder, reviewed every document, every receipt, every transfer. If they wanted a family meeting, they were going to get one, but it was going to be on my terms. Saturday arrived. At 4 p.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door. They were all there. Edward and Brenda, Paula and Rodney, even Jenna, Brenda's sister, who had never even been to my house before. A full audience. They came in silently, taking their seats in the living room. Everyone looked at me like I was the one on trial and they were the jury. Edward spoke first. "Mom, this situation has become completely unsustainable. Brenda and I have talked to Paula and Rodney, and we think you need to understand the damage you're causing." Damage? That word stung. As if I was the one destroying everything. As if 15 years of sacrifice didn't even count. "Go on," I said. My voice was calm, my hands resting in my lap, not shaking, not afraid. Brenda took the floor. "Lydia, we understand that you're upset, but a family just doesn't work this way. You can't just cut everything off because you had a bad day. The children are asking for you. They want their grandmother, but you're turning your back on them." The children again, the perfect shield. May I speak now? I asked. They all nodded, like they were granting me permission in my own home. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, grabbed the gray folder, returned to the living room, and placed it on the coffee table with a soft but firm thump. What's that? Paula asked. It's this, I replied, opening the folder. This is every single transfer I've made in the last 15 years. Every payment, every bit of help, every emergency, all documented, all verified, all right here. I took out the papers, laying them out in order on the table like poker cards, like evidence in a trial. Edward, I said, looking him directly in the eye. Here's the receipt for the $40,000 I gave you for your house down payment. Here are the monthly payments of $1,200 for 5 years, $72,000. I pulled out more papers. Paula, here's the payment for your kitchen remodel, $3,000. Rodney's coding course, $2,500. The kids' tutoring, $6,000 accumulated. I kept pulling out papers. Each one was like a stab of truth. Extra expenses, birthdays, Christmases, medical emergencies that weren't really so urgent, $7,000 more. I looked at all of them one by one. In total, in 15 years, I have given you $243,000. And that's not even counting the meals I paid for, the gifts, the times I watched the children for free while you went on vacation, the hours of my life I gave without expecting anything in return. The silence was thick, heavy. No one looked at me. They just stared at the papers, the undeniable proof of their dependency. And when I asked for a little bit of independence on your part, I continued, you called me selfish, negative, toxic. You kicked me out of a family group chat and asked me to take a step back. I closed the folder. Well, here I am, stepping back just like you asked, but I'm taking my money with me because it turns out the space you wanted included my absence, but it didn't include the absence of my wallet. And that is over. Edward started to say something. Mom, we never. I cut him off, something I had never done before. Yes, Edward. Yes, you did. And now you're going to learn to live without using me. Brenda stood up, her face red, her eyes full of tears that didn't move me at all. This is ridiculous. You're our mother. You're supposed to help us. That's what mothers are for. I laughed. A real liberating laugh. No, Brenda. Mothers are for raising their children, for teaching them, for loving them, not for supporting them their entire lives. That's called parasitism, and I refuse to be the host any longer. Paula was crying silently. Rodney stared at the floor. Jenna, Brenda's sister, looked at me with something close to respect, like she was finally starting to understand. Edward walked toward the door. This is useless. We didn't come here to be lectured. We came here to resolve this. He turned back to me. Mom, I'm giving you 1 week to reconsider. After that, you'll have to live with the consequences of pushing your family away. He opened the door. Brenda followed him. Before she left, she looked at me with pure contempt. The children are going to grow up without a grandmother. I hope your pride is worth it. And they left. Paula and Rodney stayed for a few more seconds. My daughter looked at me with pleading eyes. Mom, please think about it. They left too. Only Jenna remained. We looked at each other in silence. She smiled sadly but genuinely. I'm sorry, she said. For what? I asked. Because I should have said something years ago when I saw how this was all starting. But I thought it wasn't my place, that it was your business. She came closer and took my hand. You did the right thing, Lydia, and I know it hurts, but it was necessary. I squeezed her hand. Thank you. I whispered because that thank you, that recognition, was worth more than all the money I had ever given. Jenna left too, and I was left alone in my house, surrounded by papers that proved my point, and a silence that no longer scared me. That night I didn't sleep well, not from regret but from adrenaline. From the release of having said everything, of having shown everything, of having defended myself. Finally, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, made some tea, sat down in the kitchen and cried. Not from sadness but from liberation. I cried for all the years I hadn't stood up for myself. For all the times I had swallowed my words. For all the times I had said yes when I really wanted to scream no. I cried until there were no more tears left. And when the sun finally came up, I felt lighter. The following days were filled with absolute silence. No one called. No one texted. It was like I had been completely erased. And strangely enough, it didn't bother me. It gave me space to think, to plan, to imagine a life that didn't revolve around solving other people's crises. I started doing things I had put off for years. I signed up for a painting class, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. I went to the doctor for a full checkup, something I had been avoiding because I was always too busy with other people's problems. I called friends I had neglected and discovered that they were still there, waiting for me. Arthur and I started having coffee regularly twice a week. Sometimes we talked about deep things. Other times we just laughed at silly things. He told me about his wife. I told him about my husband. We shared the pain of widowhood and the strange sense of freedom that comes after. It wasn't romance. It was companionship. It was understanding that life doesn't end when your children abandon you. That there are other chapters, other beginnings. One afternoon while I was painting in my class, I realized something. I was smiling. Truly smiling, not forced, not fake. It was a smile that came from deep inside. From a place that had been dormant for a very long time. I was painting a sunset, orange and violet colors blending together in the sky. And I realized that's how I felt, like a sunset. Not an ending but a beautiful transition between two stages. The darkness would come, but before it, there was this golden light, this peace, this moment. The week Edward had given me passed. There was no call. There was no text, only silence. And I understood that this silence was their answer. Their way of punishing me, of trying to make me feel guilty. But it just didn't work anymore. The silence that had once terrified me now gave me peace because it was a silence without demands, without made-up emergencies, without requests disguised as love. It was simply silence. Aunt Antoinette came to visit. She brought wine, cheese, and bread. We sat out on my small balcony, watching the city light up with the evening lights. "How do you feel?" she asked. I really thought about my answer. I really thought about it. "I feel free," I finally said. "For the first time in 15 years, I feel like my life actually belongs to me." She nodded. "And do you miss them?" I took a sip of my wine. I miss the idea of who I thought they were. I miss the idea of them, but I don't miss the weight. I don't miss the pain. I don't miss feeling used. Antoinette raised her glass. "To freedom, even if it hurts." We clinked glasses, and in that crystal sound, there was something definitive, like a door closing, like a chapter ending. We talked until it got dark, about life, about decisions, about how sometimes love means letting go. She told me that she had also had to set limits with her own children, that they had also called her selfish, that she had also doubted herself. "And now?" I asked. "Now I have a real relationship with them," she replied. "Based on respect, not convenience. It took years, but it was worth it." Her words gave me hope. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the fire that burns away the fake so that something real can finally grow. Or maybe it was the end. And that was okay too, because I would continue to exist. I would continue to live. I would continue to be Lydia. Not Mom the ATM, not Mom the lifesaver, just Lydia. A 72-year-old woman who had finally learned that self-love isn't selfishness. It's survival. 3 weeks after I made my decision, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but something told me to go ahead. "Lydia?" A young, nervous woman's voice asked. "Yes. Who is this?" There was a pause. "I'm Julia." "Well, my name is Juliana, but everyone calls me Julia. I'm Edward's oldest daughter, your granddaughter." My heart just stopped. Julia was 16 years old. The last time I had seen her was 2 months ago for her birthday, when I gave her an envelope with $500 that she barely even acknowledged. "Julia, are you okay?" I asked. "Yes, Grandma. I needed to talk to you without my parents knowing." I sat down, my legs shaking. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" She took a deep breath. "Grandma, I know what happened. I overheard my parents talking while yelling about the money about you, and I need you to know something. I don't agree with them. Her words hit me with unexpected force. What exactly did you hear? I asked. Everything. That you stopped giving them money. That dad is freaking out because he can't pay the mortgage without your help. That mom says you're selfish. That they're thinking about selling the house. And Grandma, I think you're right. I couldn't even speak. Tears just came without me even trying to stop them. My granddaughter, a 16-year-old teenager, understood what her own parents just couldn't see. Why do you say that? I finally managed to ask. Because I've seen how they treat you for years. Every time you come over, they only talk about money, about problems, about things they need. They never ask how you are. They never really thank you. And I noticed, but I didn't know what to do. I thought that's just how families were, but now I understand that it's not, that it's wrong. I closed my eyes, listening to her voice, so mature, so clear. Julia, I don't want you to get in trouble with your parents over this. She laughed, a bitter laugh. Grandma, I'm already in trouble because I told them they were wrong. That you're not the bad guy, and Mom grounded me. She took my phone. I'm calling you from a friend's phone. My heart broke a little more. Sweetheart, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, she replied firmly. Because someone has to tell you the truth. That you're not crazy, that you're not mean, that what you did was brave. We talked for an hour. Julia told me things I had never known. How Edward and Brenda constantly fought about money. How they always expected me to solve everything. How even the younger kids had learned that Grandma was the one who paid for everything. She told me that her 10-year-old brother had said, "If Grandma doesn't give us money, why do we even want her around?" And that no one had corrected him. No one had explained to him that people aren't loved for what they give. They're loved for who they are. That conversation changed something in me because it confirmed that I wasn't just imagining things. The dynamic was real, and even a teenager could see it clearly. After hanging up, I sat there in the dark just thinking. Julia had given me a gift. The gift of validation, of knowing that I wasn't the only one who saw things this way. That someone else saw the truth. And that truth, as painful as it was, made me stronger because it meant my decision wasn't crazy. It was sanity in a sick situation. That night I wrote a letter, not to send to anyone but just for me, to get my thoughts in order, to process everything I was going through. I wrote about love, about limits, about how sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no. I tucked it into an envelope without a name on it. Just as a reminder of this moment, this transformation. A month after I made my decision, Paula showed up alone, without Rodney, without the kids. She rang the doorbell mid-morning. I was eating breakfast. I opened the door and saw her. She had dark circles under her eyes. She had lost weight. She looked tired. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded. I made coffee. We sat in silence. She stared at her mug, turning it in her hands without taking a sip. "Mom, I came to talk for real, without Rodney, without Edward. Just me." I looked at her, waiting. "You're right," she finally said, her eyes welling up with tears about everything. "We've been selfish, ungrateful, and the worst part is we didn't even realize it." I let her keep talking. She needed to say it all to get it out. "Rodney and I did the math. We really did. We looked at how much you've given us, how many times you've been there, and then we looked at how many times we've been there for you. And the answer is almost never. We didn't call you on your birthday last year. We didn't go to the hospital when you had your gallbladder surgery. We weren't there on the 5-year anniversary of Dad's death. We only showed up when we needed something." She was openly crying now. "And the worst part is we convinced the kids that this was normal. That Grandma existed to give, not to receive." I moved closer and took her hand. "Paula, I appreciate that you see it. I truly do. But you understand that I can't go back to the way things were, right?" She nodded. "I know. And I'm not here to ask you to go back. I'm here to apologize and to tell you that we're going to be okay. Rodney got a better job. We're moving to a smaller apartment. We're going to adjust everything without your money because that's how it should be." Her words were like a bomb. They didn't fix everything, but they did heal something. And Edward? I asked. She shook her head. Edward is furious. Brenda is too. They don't want to admit anything. They're looking for loans, talking to banks, blaming you for everything. I sighed. I can't control how they react, Paula. I can only control my decisions. She squeezed my hand. I know, and your decision was the right one. Even if it hurts me to admit it, even if it took me a month to see it, it was right. We hugged. And that hug felt different. It didn't have any hidden motives. It came with no demands. It was just a hug from a daughter to her mother, from one person to another. Real true healing. When she left, I had a strange feeling. It wasn't pure joy, but it wasn't pain either. It was somewhere in between. Cautious hope. The possibility that maybe, with time, something real could be rebuilt. 2 days later, Arthur invited me out to dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the waterfront. I hadn't been to a place like that in ages. I was always saving, always holding back so I could give to others. I put on an emerald green dress I had bought but never worn. I did my hair and put on makeup. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I didn't quite recognize but whom I liked. A woman who was dressing up for herself, not to impress anyone, just because she wanted to feel good. The dinner was wonderful. We talked about everything and nothing. Arthur told me about his grandson who was studying abroad, about his plans to travel next year, about how he had learned to cook after his wife passed away. I told him about my painting class, my new friends, how I was rediscovering who Lydia was without the burden of being a provider. We laughed a lot, and I realized it had been months since I had laughed like that, freely, without guilt, without fearing the phone ringing with a new emergency. When we finished dinner, we took a walk along the boardwalk. The air smelled like salt. The city lights sparkled, reflecting on the water. Lydia, Arthur said, stopping. I want to tell you something. These last few months, getting to know you better, I've seen something beautiful. I've seen a woman reclaim her life, her power, her voice, and it has been a privilege to witness it. I blushed. Thank you, Arthur. You've been an important part of that. You've listened to me without judging. You've been there for me without asking for anything, and that has meant more than you can imagine. We stood watching the ocean in silence, a comfortable, complete silence. And I understood something fundamental. I had spent so many years filling silences with sacrifices that I had forgotten that silences can also be peaceful. That not all empty spaces need to be filled. That sometimes simply being, existing, without giving, without doing, without solving is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. 6 weeks after my decision, I got an email from the bank. The subject line read, "Important mortgage notification." My heart skipped a beat. I opened the email. It informed me that Edward had officially requested my removal as guarantor, that the process was underway, and that in 30 days my name would no longer be connected to that debt. I read the email 3 times, and then something strange happened. I smiled, not out of spite, but from a feeling of deep relief, because it meant he was taking responsibility, that he was looking for solutions, that finally, after all this time, he was being an adult. That same afternoon, I called my accountant. I need to review my full financial situation, I told him. We made an appointment for the following week. When I arrived at his office, I brought all my bank statements. He looked over everything carefully. After an hour, he looked at me over his glasses. Lydia, do you know how much money you've saved in these 2 months? I shook my head. $10,000 that used to automatically leave your account, and is now staying with you. He showed me the numbers, the projections. If you keep going like this, in 5 years, you will have made back a significant portion of what you gave away and will be able to have a comfortable retirement. I left that office with something I hadn't felt in years. Financial security. I wasn't rich, but I also wasn't draining myself dry to support other people's lives. I was stable, self-sufficient, free. That night, I calculated how many years each decision had cost me. The $40,000 for the down payment, 2 years of work. The $72,000 for the mortgage, 4 years. The monthly transfers, 6 years in total. I had given away almost 12 years of my working life. 12 years I would never get back. But at least that drain would now stop growing. One morning while I was having coffee on the balcony, my phone rang. It was Julia again. "Grandma, can I come visit today after school?" "Of course you can," I told her. She got there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with her backpack, her eyes bright. She came in and gave me a big hug. "I missed you," she whispered. And I felt something inside me melt because that hug didn't ask for anything. It only gave. I made hot chocolate. We sat in the living room. She told me about school, about her friends, about a boy she liked, normal things, teenage things, things that had nothing to do with money or problems. "Grandma," she said after a while, "I want you to know something. Dad and Mom are still mad at you, but I'm not. I understand why you did it, and I think it was brave." I stroked her hair. "Julia, someday you too will have to set limits in your life with the people you love. And it will hurt, but it will be necessary. And I want you to remember this moment. To remember that it's okay to say no. That it's okay to protect yourself, and that it's okay to exist for yourself." She nodded, her eyes a little teary. "I will remember. Promise." Before she left, she pulled something out of her backpack. An envelope. "Here," she said, putting it in my hands. "What is this?" She smiled shyly. "It's the $500 you gave me for my birthday. I saved it. I didn't spend it because when you gave it to me, I didn't even thank you properly. I was so used to getting things from you that I thought it was normal. But now I understand that nothing you gave us was normal. It was a sacrifice. It was love. And I didn't appreciate it. So I'm giving it back to you. Not because I don't need it, but because I need you to know that I understand, that I see it, that I value it. Please keep it, or use it on yourself for something that makes you happy because you deserve it." My tears started falling uncontrollably. I tried to give it back to her. "No, sweetheart. That money is yours. It was a gift." She shook her head. "Grandma, the best gift you've given me isn't money. It's this lesson. It's showing me how to be strong. It's teaching me that true love has boundaries, and that is priceless." I hugged her, crying. My little Julia had understood at 16 what her parents didn't understand at 40. She had learned the lesson that took me 72 years to learn. That night I couldn't sleep, but not because I was upset. It was because of something akin to fulfillment. Julia had given me hope. The hope that this pain, this cutting off, this break hadn't been for nothing. It had planted a seed in the next generation. A seed of dignity, of boundaries, of self-love. And that seed would grow. Maybe not in Edward, maybe not in Brenda, but in Julia. And that was enough. It was more than enough. 2.5 months after my decision, Antoinette organized a dinner at her house. She invited her friends and me. I came with wine and flowers. The house was full of laughter. Women my age, some older, some a little younger, all with their own stories, all with scars, all with hard-earned wisdom. During dinner someone asked, "And you, Lydia, how are you doing?" And for the first time in my life I answered with complete honesty. I told them everything. No filters, no shame, no fear of being judged. When I finished, there was a brief silence. Then one by one they started to talk. Teresa told about how her son had conned her, taking her savings and promising a business that never happened. Rose talked about her daughter who only called her to ask her to watch the grandchildren, and who treated her like a free babysitter who got mad if she had plans of her own. Carmen shared how her children had sold her house without even asking her, telling her it was for her own good, and then kept the money. Each story was like looking in a mirror. Each story was validation. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only one. I wasn't a monster for setting boundaries. That night I understood something fundamental. The women of my generation, the mothers, the grandmothers, we have been raised to give until we disappear, to sacrifice ourselves until we are erased, to exist only for the sake of others. And when we finally claim a space of our own, when we finally say enough, the world calls us selfish, punishes us, abandons us. But the truth is something else entirely. The truth is that we have been exploited under the guise of love. And waking up from that exploitation, even if it hurts, even if it costs you, is the most revolutionary thing we can do. At the end of the night, Antoinette raised her glass. To the women who learned to say no. To the mothers who are reclaiming their lives. To the grandmothers who stopped being ATMs and became people again. To us, to Lydia, to all of us. We clinked glasses. And in that sound there was something sacred, something powerful. The sisterhood of women who refused to keep being martyrs, who chose to live instead of just serve, who understood that you can't give from an empty well. I left that house feeling something new. Community, belonging. Not with my blood family, but with my chosen family, with these women who understood me without explanation, who supported me without conditions, who celebrated my courage instead of punishing it. And I realized I had gained more than I had lost. I had lost children who used me, but I had gained friends who saw me. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family, but I had gained the reality of an authentic life. And that reality, while imperfect, was mine, completely mine. That night before bed I took out my diary, a new one I had bought the week before, brown with blank pages just waiting to be filled. I wrote on the first page, "Today my real life begins." Not the life others designed for me. Not the life of serving and disappearing, but my life. The life of Lydia, a 72-year-old woman who finally learned that she didn't have to earn the right to exist, that her life belonged to her, that she could say no without explanations, that she could live without carrying other people's worlds, that she could simply be, and that simple act of being was revolutionary. It was powerful. It was sufficient. I closed the notebook, put it away, and went out onto the balcony. The sun was setting, painting the sky with oranges and purples, just like my painting in class, just like my life now. A beautiful sunset between two stages. I wasn't afraid of the night that was coming because I had learned that after every night comes a dawn. And I, after years of darkness, had finally woken up. I took a deep breath, the air filling my lungs, and I smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally okay with the imperfect, because I had learned the most important lesson. You can't give from an empty well. And I, after so many years of being dry, was finally filling up. Drop by drop, decision by decision, boundary by boundary, I was filling up. And this time the water was just for me. 3 months after my decision, I woke up with the sun shining through the window. It was Saturday. Saturdays used to mean calls, requests, made-up emergencies. Now they meant silence, peace, time for me. I got up slowly without rushing. I made coffee and toast, sat on the balcony, and breathed deeply, fully, freely. The air tasted different. Or maybe it was me who had changed, who had learned to live her life instead of just survive it. My phone vibrated. A text from Paula. "Mom, the kids are asking for you. Can we come over tomorrow with no agenda, just to see you?" I read the message 3 times, looking for the catch, the hidden motive, but I didn't find it. I replied, "Tomorrow is fine at 3. She replied with a simple heart emoji without words. And that, in a way, said more than 1,000 apologies because she had learned that sometimes true love is silent. It doesn't yell. It doesn't demand. It just shows up with consistency, with respect, with real presence. The next day, Paula arrived with the kids. Rodney didn't come, and that was okay. Not everyone has to be ready at the same time. The kids hugged me. We talked. I made them cookies just like before, but it was different because now I decided when and how, without feeling obligated, without guilt. Paula helped me wash the dishes. "Mom," she said, wiping a cup dry, "I know the road is long, that I can't erase 15 years with just a few visits, but I want you to know that I'm trying, that I'm learning, that I want a real relationship with you. Not based on convenience, but on genuine love." I took her soapy, damp hand. "Paula, the fact that you see it is enough. The fact that you're here without asking for anything means more than you can imagine." She smiled with tears in her eyes. And that moment, that instant of real connection, was worth more than all the money I had ever given because it was genuine. It was clean. It was the start of something new, something healthy, something that, maybe with time, could be called family again. That week, I also got a surprise call from Edward. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring, took a breath, made up my mind, and finally picked up the phone. "Hi, Mom." His voice sounded tired, different. "Hello, Edward." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and it's not easy." I waited without pressuring him, without offering to help. "You were right about everything. Brenda and I have been going to therapy, and the counselor has made us see things we didn't want to see about how we treated you, about our dependence, about everything. His voice cracked. I'm not asking for your forgiveness because I know words aren't enough. But I want you to know that I'm working on myself, that we sold the house, that we're moving to something smaller, that we're living on what we earn. And it's hard, very hard, but it's the right thing to do. And I know it is, because for the first time in years I can sleep without that pressure in my chest, without that voice telling me I was a failure, that I couldn't support my family without my mom. My tears were falling silently. Edward, I'm glad you're doing that work. Truly. He took a deep breath. Do you think you can ever forgive me? I thought about my answer. I really thought about it. Edward, I don't know if forgiveness is the right word, because that would mean there was a crime. And maybe it wasn't a crime. It was ignorance. It was convenience. It was following a pattern without questioning it. What I can tell you is that I don't hold any resentment. That I wish you well. That I admire you for seeking help. And that maybe with time we can build something new, different, healthier. Thank you, Mom, he whispered. That's more than I deserve. We hung up, and I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling something strange. It wasn't complete joy, but it wasn't pain either. It was realistic hope. The acceptance that broken relationships can heal, but they never go back to being what they were. They become something else, and that's okay. For months after my decision, Arthur invited me to travel. Nothing crazy, he said, laughing. Just a week at the beach, two old folks enjoying the sun and the sea. I accepted without hesitating. I hadn't been to the beach in 20 years. There was always a reason not to go. There was always someone who needed me. There was always something more important than me. But not now. Now I was the priority. We packed our bags, took the bus, and during that week, I discovered something amazing. I could still be happy. I could laugh until my stomach hurt. I could walk on the sand feeling the water on my feet. I could watch the sunset without thinking about other people's problems. I could simply exist, live, be. One night, sitting on the hotel terrace with Arthur, I looked at the stars. What are you thinking about? He asked. I'm thinking that I spent 72 years believing that my value lay in what I could give, in what I could do for others. And it turns out my value was always in simply being me, in existing, in breathing, in taking up space without apologizing. Arthur nodded. We should all learn that sooner. But maybe reaching this age with that lesson is the gift, the prize for surviving. We toasted with cheap hotel wine, and that toast was sacred. It was a celebration of life, of second chances, of late beginnings that arrived just in time. When I got back from the trip, my house felt different. It was no longer a place of exhaustion. It was a home filled with peace. I put the trip photos on the refrigerator, opened the windows, turned on some music, and danced alone in my living room. No witnesses, no judgment, just me and my 72-year-old body moving with freedom, with joy, with life. Because I had finally understood that life isn't about getting to the end having given everything away. It's about getting there having lived everything. And I, after so many years of being asleep, had finally woken up. Julia kept visiting me every week. Sometimes she brought her homework, other times she just wanted to talk. She became my connection to the future. My hope that things can change, that the next generation can learn from our mistakes. One day she said to me, Grandma, when I grow up I want to be like you. Strong, brave, someone who respects herself. I hugged her, crying. Sweetheart, you already are all of that. Just remember never to forget it. Never let anyone convince you that existing for yourself is selfish. It's survival. It's self-love. It's life. 6 months after that text message, that green thumbs down emoji, that exclusion that turned into liberation, I sat down to write, not for them but for me, to document this journey, this transformation, this death and rebirth. I wrote, they called me selfish for wanting to live. They called me cruel for setting boundaries. They punished me with silence for daring to exist. But what they didn't understand is that their punishment was my gift. Their absence was my peace. Their rejection was my freedom. I wrote about the green thumbs down, about how a simple emoji can hold so much venom, but also be the catalyst for your awakening. I wrote about the $243,000, about how I bought my own slavery under the guise of love. I wrote about Julia, about Paula, about Edward, about second chances that not everyone takes but some do. I wrote about Arthur, about Antoinette, about the women who held me when my family let go, about how family by blood is assigned but family by choice is earned. And I wrote about myself, about Lydia, a woman who took 72 years to learn that she didn't have to earn the right to exist, that her life belonged to her, that she could say no without explanations, that she could live without carrying other people's worlds, that she could simply be, and that that simple act of being was revolutionary. It was powerful. It was sufficient. I closed the notebook, put it away, and went out onto the balcony. The sun was setting, painting the sky with oranges and purples, just like my painting in class, just like my life now. A beautiful sunset between two stages. I was no longer afraid of the night that was coming because I had learned that after every night comes a dawn. And I, after years of darkness, had finally awakened. I took a deep breath, the air entering my lungs, and I smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally okay with the imperfect, because I had learned the most important lesson. You can't give from an empty well. And I, after so many years of being dry, was finally filling up. Drop by drop, decision by decision, boundary by boundary, I was filling up. And this time the water was just for me. Here's to more stories just like this one. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart for your incredible support. It truly means the world to me. I'm really excited to hear what you all think about this story. So please leave your comments down below. And right here on the screen, you'll find 2 new real-life stories that I can't recommend enough. You absolutely have to check them out. There's tons more content just like this on my channel. And last but not least, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.